All right, today we're going to pick up lesson 3.5 right here at example number 3. And real quick, let's review, and I'm going to write it at the top of the screen. What is the slope-intercept form of a line? Very good. Y equals mx plus b. So in example number 3, they're simply asking us to identify the m, or the slope, and the b, the y-intercept. Now, looking at letter A, is it in the correct form? Yes. So since it is in y equals mx plus b form, this should be really simple. What is the slope of this line? -6. Remember, m is the coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x in this problem is -6, which makes -6 my slope. Now, what is my b? 1. But what is b? Like, what does that 1 tell me? The y-intercept. Very good. So it's where my line is going to cross the y-axis. Very good, guys. Very good. All right. Now let's look at b. At first look, is this in the correct form? All right, but let's look at it. Y equals mx plus b. What's missing from this problem? So the m and the x are gone, right? What is the only way that the m and the x went away? What would the m have to be if it went away? So what is my slope? 0. And my y-intercept? 8. So this one was in the correct form. It just didn't have a slope. All right, so that's on y equals mx plus b. Y is by itself. The mx is gone because the m was 0. The slope was 0. And then my y-intercept is 8. All right, now look at letter C. Is it in the correct form? How do we put this in the correct form? What do we have to isolate in order to get this in the right form? Y. All right, very good. So how are we going to do that? What do we got to do first? We got to subtract x. Now, I don't know if you recognize this, but if you go back in your brain all the way to chapter 1 test, remember the section that asked you to solve the literal equation for y? Nope. Okay. Yes, good. For those of you that do remember, they were preparing you for this right here. All right. I told you what we learned in one chapter, you can't forget because it comes with us. This is a perfect example. So we're going to subtract x from both sides. Bring down 4y. Now, if we are trying to get the form y equals mx plus b, which term on the right do you think makes sense to bring down first? The x. So -x, and then of course that is a -10. All right. This way it's already it's already in the correct form, and we don't have to rearrange things later. All right. Now, some of you stopped on your test. You said, I'm done. Y is by itself. But is y by itself yet? No. How do I get y by itself? Divide everything by 4. I'm dividing. That's 4 times y. So the inverse is to divide. So I'm dividing every single term by 4. So y equals, now there's an understood what in front of that x? 1. And here's why that's important. I can rewrite this as -1/4 and just drop the x down beside the fraction. That is going to help me identify my slope easily. So that's -1/4. Guess what some people write when they see that? They write 4. That's why it's important to understand there is a 1 in front of that x. So it's -1/4 x. And then what happens to -10/4? Tell me again, what happens to 10/4? It reduces to -5/2. Remember, we must always, and we don't want to box that in, that's not our answer, but we must always reduce fractions. Now, once it is in the correct form, now we should be able to identify our slope and our y-intercept. So what is our slope? -1/4. And what is our y-intercept? -5/2. Awesome. Any questions? Now that is going to carry us into example number 4. Graph the linear equation. Identify the x-intercepts. Now remember, this week we also learned about lines that are written in standard form. When I see a line on a quiz or a test that is in standard form, what is the quickest way to graph a line in standard form? You just did it on your homework last night. Find the what? The intercepts. and graph the intercepts. Okay, great. Now, if I'm graphing a line that is in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, I got to know two things. I got to know the slope and I got to know the y-intercept. That's what we just did in example number 3. So looking at letter A, is this in slope-intercept form, the equation? Yes. So we should very easily be able to identify m, and we should very easily be able to identify b. So what is my m or my slope in this problem? 4. And what is my y-intercept? -4. Good. Now notice the steps that are underneath the instructions. These are not going to show up on a test or a quiz. So you need to make sure this is what you're going to memorize when you study. How do I graph a line in slope-intercept form? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot the y-intercept. So what was the value of our y-intercept for this one? -4. So from the center of my graph, where do I go to plot -4? Down, because it is my y-intercept. So I should be on the y-axis. Now here's the mistake that's made. Not everyone, people think that the slope is a point. Okay? But remember we learned yesterday, slope is what over what? Rise over run. So slope is a direction of movement. And so step number 2 says, follow the slopes, rise over run. So we are going to follow, in our case, what was our slope? 4. But we got to write it as a fraction. So if we're going to write it as a fraction because we need a rise over a run, it's 4 over 1. Very good. Now, from the y-intercept, if my rise is 4, am I going up 4 or am I going down 4? Up 4, so move up, don't plot a point yet, but go up 4 spaces. And then my run is a positive 1. Is that right 1 or is that left 1? Right. So I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to the right one, and that is where I'm going to plot my point. Now we're going to do it one more time. Okay? Why, Ms. Johnson, why do I have to do 3 points? Because I like 3 points. Other teachers might like 2. Some teachers like 4 or 5. I'm good with 3. Remember our x and y charts? How many ordered pairs did we create? 3. So that's the only reason we're doing this. But from our new point, we're going to follow our slope again. So from this point at 1, 0, we're going to do it one more time. We're going to go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and right 1. And we're going to plot that third point. And we're done. Now this is so much quicker than an x and y chart. Could we do an x and y chart? Absolutely. Okay. Make sure you draw your line through the points and put your arrows. Now, you'll notice the instructions. Remember, we're always checking those instructions. It also asks us to identify the x-intercept. The x-intercept is where our line crosses the what? The x-axis. So where does this line cross the x-axis? What's the ordered pair? 1, 0. So just label it. You can label it right on the graph, and you're done. Now, sometimes your line, you may not draw your line long enough. If they've asked you to identify the x-intercept, make sure you draw your line long enough to where it actually intersects the x-axis so you can find it. All right, but in this one, our line very clearly goes right through 1, 0. All right, now look at letter B. Is it in the correct form for us to graph? No, so what are we going to do first? We're going to subtract x from both sides. We got to get y by itself. So 2y equals, what am I going to bring down first? -x plus 6. All right, how do I finish this? Divide everything by 2. Now I'm in the same boat. What's in front of my x? What's understood to be there? A -1. So the equation is going to read y equals -1/2 x plus 3. Good. Now let's identify the m and the b. What is my slope this time? -1/2. And what is my b? 3. Very good. All right, Dalton, what do I do first if I want to graph this line?
On the y-axis, you could...
You're right. So from the center, where am I going to go?
To the left.
Well, it's my y-axis. Remember, my y-axis is... Is my y-intercept positive 3 or negative 3?
Oh, it's positive.
Yes. Remember, we got to plot the y-intercept first. So my b is 3. So from the center, I'm going right up there to positive 3, and I'm plotting my first point. Now, Dalton, we're going to follow the slope. So our slope is negative 1 over 2. So from that y-intercept, where do I go?
To the left.
Well, my rise is first, right? It's rise over run. So rise is negative 1. Is that up or is that down?
Down.
Down. My run is 2. That's a positive 2. So is that right or left?
Right.
Right. So from that 3, from that point on 3, I'm going down 1 and right 2. And then I'm plotting my point. And I do it one more time. From that new point, I'm going to go down 1 and right 2. I've created 3 points that create a straight line, and I draw my arrow. Now, is my line long enough for me to identify the x-intercept?
Yeah.
Mine's not quite long enough, but hopefully on your paper you can continue. Can anybody identify the x-intercept? No. I'm past the 5.
6.
Okay, it's 6, 0. It should be, your line should cross the x-axis at 6, 0. Okay, any questions?
No.
All right, let's look at our last one. I changed from what we had in our notes yesterday, so write the problem down. Okay, I got rid of the word problem for today, and I just want to look at this one. Is it in the correct form?
No.
Nope. So we got to do what first?
Right there.
Subtract x from both sides. We're getting a lot of practice with this, and that's good. Hopefully you're getting better the more you practice. So 4y equals, what am I bringing down on the right side? Negative x plus 8. Good. Anthony, what am I going to do to get y by itself? Divide every term by 4. So Anthony, what does that give me? Y is equal to? Good. Remember there's that understood 1 right there. So negative 1 over 4x plus 2. Great job. Now let's identify my m and my b. Myri, what is my slope? Now that I've got it in slope-intercept form, what is my slope? Negative 1 over 4. And b? Very good. So what do I plot first, Myri? Which is? So from the center, where do I go? Very good. Up to 2. All right. Deja, my slope is negative 1, 4. So from that point, my rise, am I going up or down? And then am I going right or left?
Down 1.
Down 1 because it's negative.
And right.
And right 4 because it's positive. So good. Down 1 and then 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right puts me right there. Now, when you're drawing your own coordinate plane, you have control. You can make your graph longer. All right. But this is a perfect opportunity because I don't have enough room to go down 1 and down 1 and right 4. So this is a perfect opportunity for me to show you guys something else. Go back up here to your slope. Everybody understands when you have a negative fraction, you have control over where that negative goes. I could also say that my slope is 1 over negative 4. Does everybody agree with that? Okay, I can make the negative sign be down by the 4. So let's go back to our y-intercept and let's plot a point when this is our slope. Okay, so you got to go back. This only works if we go back to our y-intercept. But now let's do a positive 1 over a negative 4. So from my y-intercept, what direction am I going? Up 1. And if my 4 is negative, I'm going, so up 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left, and my point's right there. Do I still have a straight line? Yes, I do. So again, when you're in control, you can make your graph long enough to where you can go down 1 and right 4 again. And that's actually probably a good idea for you because you need to identify the x-intercept. But what if you don't have room on your graph? You got to know that you can move that negative sign around a little bit. Okay? Now, what is my x-intercept? Looking at your graph on your paper, if I went down 1 and right 4, I think I would be right on 8, right? So what is my x-intercept? 8, 0. All right, very good. And if you did that, always you can just identify it right by the point. All right, and that is the end of lesson 3.5.